The world is a remarkably simple place when you're 5. Friends are made effortlessly, and loyalty isn't dependent on anything beyond the mutual love of some toy or TV show. So when my daughter Sarah first mentioned her new friend Tommy, I didn't think much of it. Imaginary friends are standard fare at her age, and it was healthy for her imagination. The first time I noticed something unusual was on a chilly Sunday evening. As I walked past Sarah's room, I heard her giggling. The sound of a child's laugh can be the most comforting thing, but this felt different, more secretive. I softly peeked into her room. She was sitting in a circle of toys, whispering. "Who are you talking to, sweetie?" I inquired. She looked up, her eyes wide and innocent. "Tommy." I smiled. "What were you two whispering about?" Sarah glanced to her side, as if waiting for Tommy's permission to tell. "He just tells me stories, Daddy, about the outside world. He says he has been everywhere." I chuckled. "Sounds like a very adventurous friend." Things took a strange turn a few days later when I found her in the backyard, talking animatedly to a bush. When I asked her what she was doing, she claimed Tommy lived there. I just put it down to her vibrant imagination. It wasn't until she started revealing things she couldn't possibly know that the unease began. Sarah started sharing detailed accounts of places she'd never been. She mentioned a small toy shop in a town we'd never visited, a park with a blue and yellow swing set in another state, and an ice cream parlor where Tommy met another friend. Curious and admittedly a little concerned, I started looking up these places. To my shock, they all existed, exactly as Sarah described. As days passed, I began hearing hushed conversations late at night, long after Sarah should have been asleep. She talked about more places, more experiences, and about some man, a man Tommy was afraid of. One night, as I was getting water from the kitchen, I heard Sarah's voice from the living room. It was past her bedtime. I tiptoed to see who she was talking to. From my vantage, I saw her in dim light, holding hands with a tall, gaunt figure. The sight made my blood turn cold. Who was this? Gathering courage, I yelled, "Who are you?" The figure bolted out the back door. Sarah, startled, began crying. I ran to her, holding her tight, and called the police. The following investigation unraveled a series of horrifying truths. The man had been a drifter, traveling from town to town, using an intricate network of small underground spaces linked to our house. He befriended children, get close, learn their schedules, their lives. He had done it multiple times in different states, and now he was in our home, whispering stories of his travels through a vent in Sarah's room. The backyard bush? It concealed an entrance to his hideout. As for Tommy, the police found a set of old children's clothes in his underground lair, along with a diary detailing his travels. The last entry spoke of befriending a little boy named Tommy, who went missing in another state. The man was captured a week later, trying to enter another home in a neighboring state. Our family moved out of that house, trying to leave behind the shadows of that horrifying encounter. Sarah went to therapy, and over time, the whispers of Tommy faded. One evening in our new home, as we sat down for dinner, she looked at me and said, "Daddy, Tommy says thank you. He says he can rest now." I hugged her tight. The skyline of the city was dominated by massive structures, but tonight, one tower stood out less than the others. The towering office building I worked in was enshrouded in an abyss of darkness, its glass and steel facade blending into the obsidian night. Lights from neighboring skyscrapers failed to penetrate its opaque visage. But inside, one of the top floors was still dimly illuminated. There, a single desk light pooled its glow on stacks of papers and an exhausted worker, me. Another project with an impossible deadline meant burning the midnight oil. And so, once again, I found myself working late, wrapping up the intricate designs of my latest architectural project. The muffled hum of the HVAC system was the only sound accompanying the soft scribbles of my pen. With each passing hour, the office had emptied out, leaving behind only the ghost of echoed footsteps and hushed conversations. Finally, the ornate clock that I had inherited from my grandfather signaled that it was midnight. Its chimes were both a comfort and a reminder that the world outside still moved at its normal pace. Rubbing my tired eyes, I decided to call it a day. Packing up my things, I began my lonely journey to the underground parking lot, using the elevator's descent as a moment of reflection and transition from work mode to the anticipation of home's warmth. Reaching the parking level, the atmosphere shifted. The once bustling space during the day now exuded an eerie silence. The dim overhead lights did little to stave off the shadows that clung to the corners. Rows of cars stood like silent sentinels, their polished surfaces reflecting the feeble luminescence. Unlocking my car, I was enveloped by its familiar scent and comfort. But as I settled in and adjusted the rearview mirror, my heart catapulted into my throat. There was a shadowy figure, a man sitting in the back seat. His eyes, cold and calculating, met mine through the mirror. "Drive," he ordered, voice as sharp as shattered glass. My body went rigid, each nerve ending screaming of the imminent danger. But the paralysis of fear was momentarily overridden by the primal need for self-preservation. Without a word, I obeyed, guiding the car through the spiraling exit of the garage, each turn echoing with the weight of dread. As the city's skyline unfolded before us, his directives became evident. He was guiding me away from the comforting neon lights and bustling streets. Instead, we ventured deeper into the city's underbelly. Each turn took us further from familiarity and closer to the desolation of the old warehouse district, a testament to a time when industry thrived here. "Stop here." His voice broke the monotonous hum of the car's engine. Obediently, I pulled over next to an abandoned warehouse, its windows long shattered and walls scarred with graffiti. The heaviness of the situation pressed down on me. Summoning a voice that I hoped didn't betray my fear, I asked, "Why? Why me?" He leaned forward, the scant light from the dashboard revealing a face that had seen its share of battles. "I need something," he murmured. Panic swirled, laced with confusion. "What? Money? My wallet's in the glove compartment. Take it." A chuckle, cold and mirthless, slipped from his lips. "Not what? Who? But it seems there's been an error." The revelation didn't bring relief. It intensified the fear. An error? Then why am I here? "Unfortunately, you've seen me, and that's a problem." Time seemed to slow. My mind raced through scenarios, calculating the odds. The key was in the ignition, but would I have the time to start the car and speed away? He seemed agile, and the car's confined space was a disadvantage. But as the saying goes, desperate times call for desperate measures. Mustering all my strength and courage, I lunged at him, using my body weight to push him hard against the door. The unexpected move caught him off guard. Capitalizing on this momentary lapse, I flung the door open and bolted into the night. The warehouse district was unfamiliar territory, a daunting maze of derelict buildings and winding alleyways. However, fear proved to be a powerful compass. In the distance, the glow of neon lights beckoned, leading me to a 24-hour diner. Bursting through the door, I frantically explained my ordeal to the few patrons and staff, urging them to call the police. The subsequent hours were a blur of questions, statements, and identification parades. The stranger was indeed a notorious enforcer for one of the city's most dangerous gangs. He was known for his ruthlessness, delivering messages of intimidation or worse. The real twist? I was never his intended target. It was just a cruel twist of fate that my car model matched his actual objective for the evening. The rhythmic hum of tires on the highway and the mellow croon of a late-night radio show was the only solace I found as I drove back from a friend's party. The evening was late, and a light fog danced over the road, adding an eeriness to the already dim night. The party had been a last-minute decision, and in retrospect, maybe not the best one. I was exhausted, the events of the night playing like a repetitive montage in my mind. Highway 56 was notorious for being desolate, especially this late. However, a blinding flash of red and blue lights broke my reverie. My heart started racing as the police siren wailed behind me. Cursing under my breath, I wondered if I had maybe been driving too fast without realizing. I pulled over, fingers trembling slightly. Though I hadn't had a drink at the party, the sudden appearance of a cop had my nerves spiking. Peering in the rearview mirror, I watched as a tall figure stepped out of the police cruiser, the fog swirling around his boots. There was something immediately off about him. The uniform was not like the ones I'd seen on other officers. It seemed slightly baggy, and his badge, even from this distance, looked tarnished. My paranoia began to grow when I noticed that his police cruiser lacked the typical markings. As he approached my window, the dim light illuminated a rough-looking face, hidden partly behind an unkempt beard. "Evening, ma'am," he grunted, his voice gravelly. "License and registration, please." While I complied, I couldn't help but notice his eyes, cold, devoid of the typical professional warmth you'd expect. There was something predatory about them. The radio on his shoulder didn't emit any typical police chatter. "Why did you pull me over, officer?" I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. He took his time, examining my papers. "You seemed to swerve a little back there. Have you been drinking tonight?" I shook my head quickly. "No, sir, just tired." He peered into the back of the car, his gaze lingering longer than I was comfortable with. "All alone tonight?" The very question sent shivers down my spine. "My boyfriend's expecting me," I lied, hoping to deter any ideas he might have. He leaned in closer, the faint smell of stale cigarettes assaulting my nostrils. "You should be careful, driving this late. It's not safe for a young woman like you." Despite my rising fear, my instincts kicked in. "Thank you, officer. I'll be sure to remember that. Can I go now?" He took a long pause, then finally handed back my papers. "Drive safe," he murmured, but there was no concern in his voice, just an underlying threat. The instant he walked away, I sped off, not caring about any speed limits. My heart raced, and the fog seemed thicker, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. About 10 minutes later, another blinding flash of lights filled my mirrors, the same red and blue. Panic flooded me. I dialed 911 on my phone, keeping it on speaker. 911, what's your emergency? "I think I'm being followed by a fake cop on Highway 56. He pulled me over once, and now he's behind me again." My voice was on the edge of hysteria. The operator's voice was calm. "Stay on the line. We're tracking your location. We don't have any units dispatched in that area." The words felt like a punch in the gut. The siren wailed louder, and the cruiser edged closer. "Take the next turn off," the operator said. "It should be a rest area in about 2 miles. We'll have officers waiting for you there." Every second felt like an hour. I pushed my car faster, praying the rest area would appear. Just as despair threatened to engulf me, I saw the sign. As I turned off, I saw 2 police cruisers waiting. The fake cop's car screeched to a halt behind me, but he didn't get out. After what felt like an eternity, the 2 real officers approached my car. "You're safe now," one of them said, his face filled with genuine concern. It took months to shake off the paranoia, but the one thing that haunted me the most was the realization that if I hadn't trusted my instincts and called for help, I might not have made it home that night.